watch, yeah.
I got a lot of family. There's, at any given time.
Funny thing is Tom's texted me. Tom's texted me lunches this week with like comments on
Based on
what's
your
happening
question,
in the meeting.
yeah.
He's watching all of it.
I see they're buying a Ford. Are they in the R&R? Are they buying it and putting it in the R&R? I can ask them if you don't
You'll
know.
have to ask him that.
Okay, I'll ask them.
You want to go ahead and get started?
Yeah, I think so.
Then I'll reconvene the meeting, and we will start with facilities. Ms. Wagner,
Good afternoon.
good afternoon to you.
Do we want to go ahead and start with revenues? There's really no change in revenues, if that's the easiest.
Yeah.
Let's go back to- So like I said, there really is no change in my revenue. The Public Works revenue is $3,000, which will not change, and then the corrections is $20,000, and that will not change. Those are the only two that we're collecting revenue from at this time.
Okay.
And then the baseline expenditures. Operating maintenance and supplies, we have $1,200, which has not changed. Fuel consumed, in the middle of the year, was it the beginning of the year? Middle of the year, the accounting department let us know that they were going to start coding that as a 3,200. So the fuel was not budgeted last year as a separate line item and was in our 4801 line item with the maintenance costs for our vehicles. So that is separated out as an $8,000 line item for this coming year. Small tools and equipment, we are putting up, it's 2022 was $5,000. We're continuing that as the same. The only, I'm sorry, let me go back. And the 2070 line item for uniforms has increased to $500. We allotted a $500 allowance for each one of the employees, and that has changed as of 2022. We had a new employee who's full-time. We wait for a full year before we actually give them an allowance for their uniforms. So I'd like to include an additional $500 on that line item. The fuel consumed, 3590. Non-baseline small tools and equipment, we have as $3,000. That's gone down $7,445. We'd like to purchase a water cleaning machine, a disc belt sander, and a heavy welding cabinet, along with a planer. Communications is going to be $3,600. That stays the same. Operating rentals and leases for $4,500. Getting confused on my own stuff. Travel and training, sorry about this. Travel and training is $1,200. We've allocated $1,680 for that, which goes up $480. 4503 vehicle rentals and leases. This was put into our budget in 2022. We don't have anything that we use that line item for, so that is going to be removed or requested to be removed. Building leases, we're estimating it going up to $10,800, which is a difference of $1,060. 4505, the John Deere lease, we've paid off the John Deere lease to the Public Works Department and will no longer need that line item. Utilities, we're estimating an increase on 4701 through 4712. All of those line items will be increased with a 9% CPI. 4805, repairs and maintenance to the public safety building. Line item is 107. We're increasing it $3,000, or requesting an increase for $3,000. 4808 line item. We're requesting an $800 increase for the museum and facilities maintenance for museum and facilities maintenance department building. $4846 is an increase for the Justice Center maintenance and repair for $3,330. Line item 4899, non-baseline repairs and maintenance. We're requesting an HVAC coil for the courthouse. I don't know if some of you noticed that the second floor was either not having heating or not having cooling throughout the year. And we're requesting to have the coil on that unit replaced. Carpet replacement for all of the courthouse. Seal coat and stripe the 2 parking lots in the main public parking lot and the elected official parking lot to the south of the courthouse. We're replacing the Halo air purifier lights. They're every one of the duct work of the building in all of the campuses, annex, courthouse, Justice Center, Public Safety Building, Public Works, and the 502 building. The sheriff is requesting a security wall or with a door in between their front office and the back office. This is a security necessity. We're also doing an LED retrofit down in the public safety building elevator entrance where the public enters. It's pretty dark down there. I don't know if some of you have ever used that elevator. And the LED retrofit for the dome lighting. A lot of the lighting is projecting heat and not only that, but not working. It's intermittent, so we'd like to fix that if we can. And there's been a request for an office window that opens in the public safety building. Last year, we replaced at least one window or one opening window in each one of the departments in the public safety building, and this was the only one that didn't have anybody in the office, and this is the only one that they've requested. Now somebody is in there and they've requested an opening window. Are there any questions? I like the silence.
I have one, the 57,000 for the vehicle, for the Ford 150. Is that going into ER&R?
It is not going into ER&R. We own it out. We would own it outright. In the last 2 years, we have purchased a vehicle. We own them outright. We maintain them outright, and they would not be going into the ER&R.
So I just have been kind of making note, the departments to do that. So just for my, how many vehicles do you own?
We have 5,
5?
and we have 5 employees.
That was the next question.
Yeah, we have 5 employees. It's unusual that we would be able to all drive down here and use one vehicle
Right,
and then be able to do
No,
that.
that's fair enough, yeah, just,
You maintain an amortization account or escrow account of some kind so that when your vehicles wear out, you have funds to buy a new one?
No, we don't. I will tell you that we've used all of the vehicles that we've been given to the extent of their life. They've gone through the police department and then the commissioners, and we've ended up using them. So if I'm guessing we can at least get 20 to 30 years out of them.
But this is a new one. that you're
But this
buying.
is a new one,
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The vehicles that we have right now are, the 3 vehicles that we have left. It goes down the line where we kind
You
of
say
get
some of your-
rid of the worst one, and then we,
So some of your vehicles have considerable age?
correct.
Okay.
So vehicles that are in ER&R, you pay for the maintenance and upkeep, you also pay an amount forward so that when the vehicle is worn out, then there's funds in the account to buy the next vehicle. The way you're doing it, current expense buys the vehicle, you wear it out, and then current expense buys you another vehicle. I'm not saying that's good, bad, right, or wrong, but it is different than what other departments experience who work through ER&R. They are paying for their next replacement vehicle a little bit each month as they go.
Which is what we did with the lawnmower, and it didn't really work out for us that well.
Yeah, I'm not advocating for or against the ER&R decision as much as I am pointing out that if departments are going to have current expense buy a vehicle, then I think they ought to be setting aside funds monthly, quarterly, annually, whatever, so that when it's time for another vehicle, it's funded. Otherwise, you're really comparing apples and oranges. You're saying it's cheaper for us because we're not paying these big ER&R funds, but you're also not accumulating the funds to buy your next vehicle. So it's really two different situations. Frankly, if current expense is going to buy the replacement vehicle for you, then why would you pay into ER&R? But if it were apples and apples, where departments had to pay in for their next vehicle over time, the way you do with ER&R, the calculus, the comparison between the two might be much different.
The last 2 years is the first time that we've ever gotten new vehicles. All of the vehicles that we've had throughout the time that I've been here, and that doesn't make it right or wrong, we have never paid into ER&R for a vehicle.
Yeah, and 2 years ago, I wouldn't have said any of this because it wouldn't have been relevant because you were getting hand-me-down vehicles and you were using the remaining life in them. And it wouldn't have made sense to try and amortize a new vehicle that somebody else has already run into the ground. But now you're buying new vehicles through current expense. It raises the question, well, who's going to buy the next one?
Any other questions? Mr.
I
Johnson?
have one that's not really directly budget related. Last night at the commissioners meeting, we had a public comment regarding a program that heretofore I was unfamiliar with. It's called Operation Greenlight. It's a way for communities to recognize and promote veterans services by lighting up their buildings at night in green floodlights. And I'm curious, I know we've done some holiday lighting and other things in the past. Question is, is that something, are you even aware of that, or could you look into that to see what it would take to Franklin County to support something like that?
I am aware of it, and I believe it's 2 weeks in November.
Correct.
And have the dates.
It's right around Veterans Day.
Right, and we have the capability of doing green on the uplights if that's what you guys are requesting, so.
And the dates they gave yesterday, I think it starts just like in a week. We had a resolution that was provided by NACO that we're going to try to have on the next board meeting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I
not,
will- I'll
it's not 2
follow up.
weeks. I think it's only a week is
Oh, okay.
when we looked it up last night.
I'll follow up with the specifics, and we can do that if that's what you guys desire, so.
Thank
Lit
you.
it red, white, and green for the holidays one year.
We were discussing that earlier. It's bittersweet. Thank you. Thanks.
It looked lovely.
Was there any other requests?
Any other
or
questions?
Questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Information Services. Ms. Couples? I believe this is tab 18.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon.
All right, for revenue for our department, we're looking really good in 2022. I have increased that, 27,600 for 2023. If you guys don't have any questions regarding revenue, I'll go down to expenditures.
Questions? No? Okay,
You
cool.
could just speak to 1354, the info services service work. Who are you doing that work for that's paying us?
Are you talking about the one ending in 354?
Yes.
Yes.
That's work orders for Public Works, Corrections, and HAPO mainly, billable departments.
Okay, people outside the current expense. Okay, thanks.
Moving down to expenditures, the first request is for $35.99. I'm requesting $125,760. This would replace several 5-year-old computers, laptops, tablets. It includes 12 deputy laptops. Also upgrades monitors, computers, licenses, and provides added expense for IT spares, hardware for the sheriff's office and information services. This is actually a decrease from 2022's budget. So it did go down a little bit, but the next one is 4206. This is a decrease of 15,000. The decrease is due to changing the way that we bring in our phone circuits for our phone system. We went from an analog circuit to voice over IP. Now those charges are coming in and being paid out of 4208 because it's an IP service. So actually we're just taking from one expense and paying it out of the other expense. So 15,000 reduction, and then the next one is an increase of 9,000. The next one, 4209, is I'm asking for an increase of $5,000, and this line pays for remote access to like the assessor's department, anybody that has a MiFi or a wireless access point that they take out onto the job. This fund covers that, so we need, since appraisers have more, or the assessors have a few more staff members, we needed to increase that to cover our costs. The next one, 4814, is our computer repair and maintenance line. IT equipment has went up this last year, and so we've actually overspent in that line for this year. So to get ahead of that, I'm asking for a $2,500 increase for 2023. Next one, 4816, is what we call our subscription line renewals. I'm asking for a $50,000 increase. Subscriptions go up about 5% every year. And then also we have Civic Engage, which is our website design that came online this year, so we'll have that renewal for next year. And then also the assessor's T2 Kama Cloud software that's going to come due next year. What that increase is for. Any questions before I move on to capital?
Questions?
That is the assessor's appraisal, so well, they don't pay for that out of their own budget?
No, we pay most all IT-related software
Oh, I see.
solutions, yeah.
Lucky for them.
Okay, for capital, when I submitted my budget, I submitted for $506,500. Since then, we feel, so this amount of money covers several projects, and one of the projects was multi-factor authentication application. We feel that we can get that covered within this year's budget, so we can remove that out of there, and that's $30,000. So really, now I'm asking for $476,500 to cover, you know, the 14 other projects that we'd like to see completed for next year.
What was it that you paid out of this year's budget?
We're gonna pay $30,000,
What was it?
the total.
What was it for?
Oh, it was for the multi-factor authentication. In capital, I guess the largest expense is to replace cameras over in corrections. Also provide an NVR, which is a storage device to store all the video on. And then also an application server. That is $162,000 to replace, how many cameras are over there? I want to say 110, 140, somewhere around in there. I feel it's really necessary to fund this project. It would provide a feature that they don't have currently over there. It's called Museum Feature, and it allows them to search faster for video that they're looking for. Do you guys want me to go through the capital, or do you guys?
I think we're pretty much going through it already. If you feel up like you want to go through any of it, go ahead.
Okay, I'll just read down here and these are in priority as I see them. It's hard to base a priority because everybody's projects are important, but the first one on here is to replace a UPS in the IT room. Right now, we have a 14-year-old UPS, which is an uninterrupted power supply, and it transitions the load from, if we lose power, the UPS will keep us up, and then it'll transfer to generator. The current UPS has been in there over 14 years, and it was actually funded by dispatch when dispatch was here. Line item 2 is to replace batteries over in corrections. There's 2 UPSs over there, and the batteries have not been replaced since corrections got remodeled and set up. The third one, Cisco Call Manager hardware replacement. This is to replace the 7-year-old servers that we're currently using on our phone system. Our phone system is critical. I think we need to keep up on hardware and up to date on technology with the servers and whatnot, so that's the next one. 5 is corrections video project. I already discussed that, replace the cameras at NVR and app server. Number 6, master control monitor upgrade project. This will give more more monitors in master control. It will increase from 6 to 8 monitors, and it'll also make them bigger, I think 32-inch to 40-inch monitors. And then plus the 4 computers to service those monitors. Next one is server software. And then, so I have 8A, 8 and 8A, and that's due to another request for some software out of the auditor's office, so I kind of combined them, but 8 is for software for the county and for the auditor's office. Number 9 is managed detection and response application. This is an application that would protect our network from the inside. It is artificial intelligence. We'll have an application server in our network, and it learns our network, everybody's computer. And if somebody's computer all of a sudden starts downloading something, it will shut that system down. So I feel it's really critical to have an application like this in-house. It just protects us from the inside. We've got a lot of perimeter protection. It's interior that we're really trying to protect with this. And the risk pool is also pushing for more protection from the interior. That's kind of where number 10 came from, that multi-factor authentication is something that the risk pool also recommended, but we're going to get that one before, hopefully, the end of this month. The next one is password management application. This would help everybody manage their passwords. They'd only really need to know one password to get into just about anything. Once you have set up all your passwords within that management application, it'll just autofill when you go to those different applications. The next one is network infrastructure management. This is to replace some core switches in the courthouse and in public safety building. The next one on here is a badge printer for the sheriff's office. They've got an 8-year-old badge printer over there, and it's taking its toll. And the last one on here is a request from Superior Court. They would like to add doors to all the judges' chambers. Badge reader, card readers. They want to, did I say badge readers? Okay. That's it. These are all expensive items, and so it adds up. All of them, I think, are critical. Questions?
Questions?
Yeah, Liz, what was the last one you mentioned about the courts and the judges?
So Superior Court would like to add card readers on the outside of the judges' chambers. So from the courtroom going into the
I thought I heard you say you want to add doors, and I thought, well, first off, doors is facilities, and two, they already have doors, but it's security
have
card
said that.
readers. Okay, I got it.
Yes, to add the readers to the doors, because right now they don't. Anybody can just walk right through there if they wanted to.
At least you know I was listening.
Okay, thank you. Anything else?
I have one, item 9, capital request number 9. That sounds like a really important protection for the county. I can see why the risk pool would be concerned about it. I didn't actually hear you say the term ransomware. Would that protect us with, because we see local governments, we read about it in governmental publications that local governments are getting hit by ransomware all over the place. So.
Yes, ransomware, malware, anything like that. If there's if that computer starts to act in an odd behavior, it's going to shut it down. Do you know more about it?
It's security in regards to.
With something this robust, will you continue to have to test employees and see if they click on that attachment? So?
Oh, we still do that.
Darn it, I failed twice, not since I've been here. But I really want to see that picture that they said they had of me, you know. That's how they always bait you. Look at this picture I found of you, and that automatically guarantees a click. So this would be moved to this is in capital now, but this would have to be moved to the subscription budget to a 4,000 line item the next year, right?
Yes, it's in capital now, and once we implement it next year, then the renewal would be added to 4816 for the renewal of it. Each year, it's $30,000.
And this is pretty comparative
Oh, yes,
to what's out there, and this is a huge problem nationwide.
it is.
Great.
Do we have some kind of a policy in place to deal with the ransomware situation if,
Advising users how to act, or what do you-
well, should the county be exposed and have that problem, does the risk pool
We have a
provide
data breach policy. That, I mean, if we got compromised that way, we'd have to follow those rules. Ransomware, I don't
We have
see
to go
there's,
through our notification process to.
but with CJIS, we have a data breach policy.
Would you say our daily backups are sufficient to be operational should we have a problem?
Oh, I forgot, budget. Also, Information Services manage the emergency communications budget. This is a bottom line budget. It's out of current expense, standalone. There, for revenue for that, we are projecting $30,000 more in our radio site lease revenue line. That is due to T-Mobile and Star Touch getting some revenue for us. These other, expenditure changes is more or less moving money around to meet the demands that we've encountered in '22. So $3,200 fuel consumption, we're increasing that to $2,500 more. $4,100 professional services, increasing that to $15,000 because we've had quite a bit of tower work and preventive maintenance type stuff done by professionals. So that's an increase there. $4,200 communications, increasing that to $6,000 more, and that's to cover broadband services out at Colotis and Jump Off Joe. 4530, increasing that by 20,000 based on site fees. Starbuck Tower site is now operational and it covers Palouse Falls, but there's an expense to that. That's $20,000 a year. Repair and maintenance for 4,800 repair and maintenance, increasing that 25,000 due to having to send out equipment to have it repaired. Our current VHF system is quite aged, and we're still limping it along until we have another solution for it, and it's costing quite a bit of money to keep that up and running. Questions on?
No questions? Okay, thank you.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're ahead of schedule, so we'll just move right into the prosecutor because I see they're there. They're in the room. So we're ready.
We're slated after a break, but if you're ready to go, we are.
Yeah, we're a half hour ahead of schedule, so we'll just go ahead and get after it here.
Thank you. Well, I'd just like to start with a brief intro, kind of where we are for the year. Some of the things that I think are good, need to come forward later, weren't specifically put forth in our budget as they're still in the works. One of the big things that's been, I think, of a discussion, not just before this board, but also in Benton County on the other side of the river, is trying to make improvements to mental health services. And one of the things that we've been working with over the past year is researching and figuring out ways that we could implement a similar mental health court as they have in Benton County across the river. We're trying to look at a similar model so that we would have the same or similar program so that regardless of what side of the river you go on, I mean, we know over time people travel both sides of the river, and we have to deal with the problems that are in our county. And so one of the things that we found is that there is funding for starting up the program or assisting us in starting up the program here. Once we complete that for the first year, then the county would need to take over those expenditures. But the nice thing is, our citizens have also spoken up in high favor of supporting mental health. They've agreed, they approved the tax that this board passed earlier this year. So we believe that the funding for the mental health court would be able to come out of that, because if we address these concerns at this level, it actually would save taxpayer dollars across the board on many other fronts. One, we wouldn't have to hold them in our jail. We wouldn't have to hold them for competency evaluations, which unfortunately has extended into longer periods of time. But that's something I just wanted to bring forward to the board. I have a brief memo I'll share when we're done. That's obviously just a small part. The other issue that we also are working on Whether or not it's a specific budget item for our office, I think it is related to the mental health treatment, and that's expanding the slots for our Veterans Court. This board approved, and I appreciate that, we approved a kind of like a pilot program or a trial basis. We discussed with Benton County the ability of their Veterans Court to accommodate, letting us kind of join in with their court, rather than us building up a court from scratch where we don't quite have enough participants yet, but we anticipate that that will likely grow, and when it does, and when we have enough, then we would break off and do our own. But I think it's one of those ideal partnerships that we have with Benton County, where rather than building up a whole new program here, let's just join in with what they have and pay the pro rata share to allow those veterans to participate there. So I just wanted to let the board know that that's probably something that we're not going to have necessarily. We're still trying to discuss with them on how many slots would be appropriate. Would it be 5 slots, and then come back to the board for that particular funding for those veterans? But it is related to mental health court. One of the bigger challenges we have is trying to figure out, is that something that we could tie in with the tax funding that's supposed to be able to treat mental health in its variety of forms? And I think we all recognize the impact that veterans go through from service-connected related issues, and I think certainly the mental health treatment is a good part of that. The other issue I wanted to get into is more with our priorities that we've put it together and presented as far as our increases or the additions to our budget that we're seeking. One is, for many years, we have tried to manage our office with really a low number of management personnel. It's basically myself, Ms. Shaler as the entire office manager for the various departments, and my 2 chief deputies, both on the criminal side and the civil side. One of the things that we've asked for in our request is being able to add another mid-level management position, which is essential, not only because of all the additional work that has come through the office over the years that happens with a growing number of cases that come through the office, but also the complexities of various issues, including employment issues, other issues that come up. We found it necessary to really move an existing employee into a management position because they're basically functioning as kind of a lead for the various departments. They train the various departments, but we really need them to join us as a member of management with having that ability to be able to do employee reviews, be able to help structure any issues that come up with them, but also continue the training and basically help develop a continuity. We're going to have people retire. We're looking at, 5 years down the road. We're looking, 10 years beyond. We want to make sure that we have a system in place so that when more senior level individuals leave, that we are building up people with experience, cross-training, so that they could be able to fill those roles. We have held off asking that because what we've wanted to do in prior years, when we've seen an increase, we're like, we don't want to make the request for changes just based on an anomaly. We want to look at what's the trend that we're seeing. And what we've seen from the past about 3 years is a continual increase in the number of cases. Prior to COVID, we were averaging around 300 trials, cases that are actually set go into trial. Now we're at 424 today in a relatively short time. And we really haven't added any other prosecutors or support staff. And in fact, we just finally slated one of those deputy positions in September. That was an open position since December. So one of the challenges that all of us face, and I've heard from several of the other departments, I think Office of Public Defense has highlighted a lot of the issues we have. This is not a localized problem. Trying to hire and retain qualified attorneys, prosecutors, defenders, it's a challenge throughout the state. Many of my counterparts throughout the state, Yakima, they're all struggling to fill some of those positions. A lot of that is driven by the need for bringing up compensation and looking at that retention. I know recently Benton County did a recent evaluation and boosted their deputy prosecutor positions. Obviously, that's something that's going to look at. And I know the board has kind of taken that under advisement with a more comprehensive study to look at that. but I'm going to just simply highlight what the board has already heard from other areas and departments. When we talk about the complexity of laws changing and whatnot, clearly our office is affected probably first and foremost, because implementing those changes comes by the need for updating charging documents, reviewing cases that have already been filed. Obviously, we're struggling still with the Blake and getting caught up and going through that backlog of cases. This is all the drug cases that have been prosecuted since the 70s. We're trying to keep up with those requests as they come in to vacate. That also affects the clerk's office as well as the auditor's office. Auditor's office typically is responsible for payment. Due to legislative approval last session, they are streamlining that process somewhat, where it should be the auditor's office essentially, or the clerk's office would certify the payment due. They would calculate, they would be the ones calculating what is the payment, since they're the recipient of those funds, at least originally. And then that payment would be processed through AOC. I assume that that will be somehow a partnership probably with our auditor's office, and how it is now is where I understand an order comes from the court, processed to the auditor's office, and then they would review it, and then a check gets processed. And I think that might be maybe done by the commissioner's office right now. I think Shirley might be involved in that process, if I heard correctly. But anyway, that is something that obviously has caused additional work throughout various departments, including ours. Obviously, these changes affect our office as well, because we're trying to keep up with all these legal changes, keeping up with obviously our main focus, or the main focus that most citizens see, is keeping up with the criminal activity. You hear from the sheriff's office, their workloads increase. Well, obviously, every activity, every citation the sheriff's office make, that means it's coming through our office, in addition to the state patrol and other referrals through our district court system. So one of the requests that we have is being able to add that mid-level manager to help the office with our support staff. We don't have another mid-level manager for an office our size. We have 27 total employees, including 12 other attorneys, as well as the additional support staff. And so this person will be able to assist with keeping up with meeting the training and being able to function as a manager needs to, rather than just simply a co-equal lead. This would be a position that would be moving out of the union to join our management team. We're also looking at the need, along with management, we need to have additional work on the attorney side. And so what we've created is the assistant chief position, which would be an opportunity for a senior level attorney that's already a senior level attorney in our office to be able to be eligible for that position. That would kind of be a kind of a training position. So in the absence of one of our chief deputies, when they're out, they would function as the chief deputy, but also it gives them an opportunity to participate as well as a member of management with the other 12 attorneys, because our cases are growing, the complexity of cases has changed, the body-worn cameras has caused a lot more time. So not only are we talking about an additional cases that are coming to the office, not just filed, but screening cases that have to be reviewed, it takes a lot more time to review all those, because they're having to review the videos, they're having to make sure that we are prepared for that, and this causes a reciprocal workload on the defense side. So that is another key request that we are making with this budget request, is for the addition of an assistant chief prosecutor position. That's a relatively small change from where they are as a senior DPA, but the issue is that there is no room in our current grid. We have to move up the current chief's positions up one grade, at least under our current grade schedule. I think our grade system is flawed for many reasons, and obviously we don't have time to discuss that, but one of the issues that I think Benton County recognized when they did their grade changes with their attorneys, you have for the bare minimum, an attorney coming right out of law school, they have basically a doctorate degree. They have 7 years of post-high school education as a bare minimum requirement to do that job. And currently, under our grade system, it's set at a 17. We have people that are at least that or higher that does not require that kind of education or experience requirement. So I really think that has to be adjusted. I know what Benton County did is make a percentage change for both their assistant chiefs as well as their chief deputies. It's a percentage off the prosecutors. salary. And I think that's probably an appropriate remedy. That's also similar to what you see in the sheriff's office when you have the compression change between grades, making sure that there's a significant change, because it doesn't make sense to put all this responsibility on a chief deputy who has that management oversight. I talk with them after hours frequently as cases go well beyond our regular 8 to 5 workday. So there's a lot involved with management, and so we have to make sure that our managers that are tasked with that, and the expectation is that they're available even more so than the other deputies, but on a strategic level, that compensation is evaluated. So I just want to highlight those are the two key asks, as well as we have a deputy that's been a DPA 2, basically has gone out to the step cycle, and typically we move DPA 2s to senior deputy when they've been in the office with approximately 5 years of trial experience. This person has well beyond that. And so that's our other ask that we put in the budget, is simply to recognize this is basically not a new position. It's simply, and I think the earlier budget line showed that this was actually a creation of a new position. It's not. It's simply, it should reflect the change of a DPA 1 to a senior DPA slot. That's really the impact on a budget. It's not increasing for a new position. It's basically allowing for that DPA 2 to move to a senior DPA. And so I want to make sure that the board understands that we also have the other request, which is basically requesting the analysis for the other positions in the office. I think that's been highlighted by the other departments. I don't think I need to spend more time other than saying out of inequity, whether we call it a grade change or anything, I would ask that those positions be moved to an equal spot, whether we call it a grade change, hold off on the grade, but simply having different departments with the same functionality at different pay scales, it creates a lot of disparity. And I know with the discussion as the board is moving forward with a compensation study, I think one of the best ways to address this, as we've done with the negotiations when we have pending contractual changes, I would just simply ask that this board agree that if we are going to implement a study, because other departments have had positions that have been moved already outside of the budget cycle, I would just ask this board to affirmatively approve that any approved changes to position, grades, or salaries that would be determined reasonably necessary based on the compensation study, that be effective January 1 of 23 when the new budget takes effect. I think that bridges the gap of equity amongst the different departments. I think it makes it clear that the intent of this board would be to try to establish a policy of employing equity amongst the various departments. And I think by doing that, knowing that a compensation study is coming, that basically is something that this board can do without triggering a violation of retroactivity. The board can make an affirmative statement, just like we do for the union negotiations and contracts. If the board agrees with that idea that, hey, we will implement the approval of those increases if it's warranted at a later time. And I think everybody recognizes the struggles we have with COLAs and retentions, not just in our office, but other departments in the county. I just think that would be a fair approach and a proposal, so I'd like to make that offer. Looking at specific changes in our further down our budget, we only have some minor changes that are moved, and I think that's the 3199 line, which is the Westlaw Bars line. I think this kind of crosses over a little bit with like what I heard the IS department mention. Anytime we're talking about software contracts and whatnot, they typically include an increase. Basically, every year we face a 5% increase per year, and that's just, we really don't have control of it. Westlaw, we've saved the county some money. Quite a few years ago, we were ordering many books or paper books as well. Paper books would come in with updates and additions as well. What we tried to do is realize that, look, we are going to an era of more or less a paperless type of environment. Getting away, most law firms, I think now, they use books for one thing, and that's for decor in their library. Most attorneys have found that it's much more efficient to be trained on Westlaw, which is probably one of the #1 databases of legal research. Many organizations use it, we use it. There really isn't a competition in our view for the package that we have that provides the legal research for the content that we get. That's a broad civil content that assists our risk manager, civil chief, as well as the civil department with public records issues, but it also gives us an up-to-date resource for keeping up with the criminal law changes that happen frequently, especially in our state. I talk with prosecutors in other states, and they're surprised at some of the kind of drastic changes that we seem to have from session to session on Olympia. So that's the one line change that we have where we're moving, I think it was line 3128. There's a book library line, and that's just simply moving that over to the 3199 line and streamlining that process. The other thing that we've noticed, really just a request for a small increase, and that's additional supply cost. We're asking for an increase of $4,100 to add to that line to cover some of the items that we've found necessary over the past year and just to keep up with some of the changes that we've made. See anything else other than that other item?
Just the equipment that.
Oh, that's the change.
From ER&R.
So every year,
Standard.
we update that amount from ER&R effective in January, and so that amount is reflected as a change to be consistent with that. And the other, yeah, like, as I said to the board, if we are going to be doing a compensation study, I'd like the board to really consider one of our biggest, obviously, competitors for a job market is going to be Benton County. So looking closely at what their compensation is for their deputy prosecutors. I know they've recently had some increase in changes, and I recognize that obviously we have to consider our own county's fiscal concerns. And I just ask the board, as we look at that compensation study, that we really look closely at our nearest competitor, because even if we look at other similar counties, I know last year, I believe it was, many of the other departments on the elected side used Grant County as a comparator, but really people are not leaving our area to go work for Grant County necessarily. They're leaving to go to Benton County, which would be the closest market. So I think that has to have a little bit of weight in the study as we're doing a job analysis, because obviously for Benton County, they're looking at what is their biggest competitor, which would probably be the Hanford site, and trying to make sure that we are competitive, because we feel we spend a lot of time. I mean, prosecuting attorney is one of those jobs that you really don't hit a plateau, so to speak. I mean, it's one of those things that having a 20-year prosecutor, you just can't replicate that other than years of experience. Some of it trial and error, literally trial. You go to trial, you learn what works, what doesn't work, whether that's a civil trial or a criminal trial. So there is definitely a value. We want to create a situation where we have the ability to retain our employees, not train them up and then only to have them go across the river where they don't have to relocate. They could stay in their same home. Obviously, I chose to live in Franklin County because I want to live here where I work. I have a vested interest in making sure our community is safe, and I think many of our prosecutors feel the same way, that they want to stay where they are. They want to work and serve here as well, and I hope we could do that comparison. So I guess in close, I just ask the board to consider that. I recognize what has already been said for the grade changes and moves. If the board is unable at the end of this process to be able to adopt a budget where our employees, whether we call it a grade change or step change or whatever, to move them, if we could simply agree that effective January 1, any later changes from a study, let's say we get the study back coming May or June and it says, you know what, these individuals, these positions should be compensated at X, it makes sense to do it that way, that we also have it go back to January, so that our employees in our department, as well as the other departments that have made similar requests, they're all being brought up to speed at the same rate as what has been done earlier mid-cycle. We thought we would be responsible, as we usually do, and wait to make these changes during the budget time where we could gather the statistics. It's difficult for us to make changes mid-year. As I said, we haven't even made a change or a request for additional management positions within our office since I have been here. We've tried to struggle along and deal with those years that have had increases, but unfortunately, we've just hit the point where we really need that additional assistance with having a assistant chief as well as a mid-level management position on our support staff side. And just so the board understands, we're not asking for a management level for our various departments. We have child support, we have civil, we have juvenile, district court, and felony. This is going to be a mid-level manager that will supervise all of those departments. And so I think we've been very fiscally restrained in the past, and we've reached a point where we really need to fill that role, as well as the addition of an assistant chief, so that we have a mechanism to be able to train our next management leader for our prosecution team. Any other questions?
Yeah, I think we're going to ask for a 5-minute recess after this. Okay. For Commissioner Mullen. Oh, okay. All righty. Is there any questions for Mr. Sant? I have one on the veterans account. Can that be used for mental health also?
I think we can. That's one of the issues that I didn't have a hard ask yet for the board. We are still looking at that, but I think because of the crossover, and it's hard to distinguish if someone is a veteran court participant. There could be, I guess, situations where that veteran is not necessarily suffering from a mental illness. I don't want to say every one of our veterans in Veterans Court is suffering from a mental health related issue, although that certainly contributes just with their service.
PTSD would be,
yes,
wouldn't it?
absolutely.
Okay.
But what I don't want to say, though, that every veteran, because I've gone to these, we have these meetings, and I try to get over there to join with them on their program with the mentorship. I don't want to say that every veteran participating in there is suffering from PTSD, but
Right.
clearly they're there because they are a veteran. That makes them eligible for the court. And as you said, I think that is a significant trend. I just don't want to say every participant has that issue. It is broad, and I think what we've seen over the years is that mental health is a very broad spectrum, and it could be a variety of different things. So I just want to make sure the board's aware that we will be looking at that, and I think especially if we could identify, and I think this is where we could answer your question, if we can identify a specific veteran that has been diagnosed with a specific mental health, then for that particular participant, I think we could then pull the funding from the mental health tax side and fund that particular position. I don't want to come in and ask that all the money from mental health tax go to fund these positions. I want to make sure that we're doing it on a case-by-case basis where we could identify and specifically identify a mental health condition or related part of the treatment, and whether it's PTSD or some other service-connected issue.
But what I'm asking is, can the Veterans Fund money be used for a veteran?
Oh, I'm sorry, the Veterans Fund money. I think it could. That will be a separate analysis. I'm sorry, what I was looking at is being able to fund from the mental health tax to the Veterans Court when it's, I will look at that issue and see.
Oh, yeah,
'cause I know-
I'm talking, we got a lot of money in
Yeah.
that, and if we can use it in that aspect, I think it would save the mental health money for the other people.
The other,
I don't think it can, but it's in the statute. It'll be easy to find.
the interesting issue would be is even if we couldn't use it for the specific part of the program, part of the issue is with funding of the veteran court is also to include assistance for housing. We can use that veteran funding
Housing.
specifically for housing. So I think what we can do is we could look at it as a partnership, that if we get a veteran into a veterans court through this program, if there's a need where we could help secure some housing for them in our county, that would be a great use of funds. And that, what we might be able to do is offset the cost. It gets complicated because then if we say what the board funded previously was approximately $10,000 to fund the full year of treating one veteran, what if we're taking $3,000 from our veteran fund to cover the housing cost? Would that be something that's a reimbursable offense? I think that gets really complex where the calculation of how we do that.
Yeah.
But I agree with you that that is an important use of those veteran funds. And I think once word gets out that we do have a program that could assist veterans from Franklin County, whether it's participating in the joint program until we're self-sustaining here, I think that we're going to find a lot more people because we're going to then be able to identify more veterans that have got lost in the system. And the only way we find that out is a screening tool when they come into the jail asking, hey, are you a veteran? Would you like to connect with somebody? And by having, at some point in time, we'd have our own screener that could be able to identify some of the veterans coming through our jail system, and that would help. But usually we get this through the defense attorneys. That's how we found this one individual that seemed to qualify. It was through the defense attorney that put that forward and asked us to consider it. And it took us a few months to get there, but we eventually did. So thank you for, we'll continue to look at that, because
Yeah.
I think especially if we have the funds already from a different site, that would make the most sense.
Is there any other questions? Mr. Davidson?
I have one. Excuse me for a moment, Prosecutor Sant, this might just be my own housekeeping. Tim, on tab 28, the law library, I looked through our schedule and I don't see we really assigned tab 28 to any particular department. And if that's so, I just would like, because we do have a budget for the law library, I'd just like to, I was at not one but two meetings in just the last week where ironically the topic of the law library out at CBC came up, the discussion that I was at. One was with Keith, and and of course that's a legal requirement, and I guess that they've done some changes out there, and I know that this may not be directly in your bailiwick, but I just was going to ask, do you have any knowledge about that, and are we still in legal compliance and everything as far as a public law library?
What I've heard is we do have access to limited items, I think upstairs. Outside the courtroom, there's a small room that's used as either a conference room, but it does have books in there. I think one of the discussions, was whether or not to add a terminal, similar to adding a Westlaw access so people could come in and do research. Clearly, we don't have the space requirement like what we enjoyed at CBC. CBC basically allowed us to use that library. I think we provided funding for some of the books and different materials that they had out there because they had a paralegal program. My understanding is they have kind of discontinued that program, and that's what kind of triggered the need for CBC coming and saying, hey, we need this for additional space for growth. My understanding is we're still trying to look at a longer-term solution for being able to provide location.
And I sit on that board, so what we've proposed is a lot of the books now are on the internet, so you can research those. We were going to take that space for the how-to arena, people that want to represent themselves or research stuff. It's the how-to part of it that isn't out there available to people, where a lot of the books are available on the internet.
Where do they access that? At the library, at CBC or here?
CBC, it does not everything had to be moved. It's gone.
We used to have, because we used to have a lot, it's been years ago, but we had a car pass that I'd hand to the attorneys, and it got them into a parking lot at CBC, and they went and did research there, but.
Yeah, all the books have been moved. They're looking for a spot. I think we still meet our obligations with the space that we have at the courthouse, Benton County, and we're looking for a space to reopen up if we can. If we can't find one, we're sort of, all we got here at the courthouse is that room, and we're going to use it for the how-to, where you can get all the other information off the internet on the cases.
My suggestion would be is that we look at the online aspect. Is the how-to, is that like a module that would be added with the computer system, so it would pull up different things where you could print
Well, no,
out
I think these books would actually be shelved in the library.
Because I know that was something that we looked at, because there was a time where, because of our Westlaw contract, that library, it wasn't as comprehensive as we needed. As complexities changed, probably 6 years ago, it might have even been longer, maybe 7. But we had to expand our contract, and that did cause an increase in the Westlaw contract. But it did, when we looked at it as saving time from not having attorneys with the need to go to the CBC library to pull things that were included in their all-inclusive account compared to our more limited, we were able to negotiate years ago a broader base that really covered a lot of the different topics on the civil side as well as all state. So in other words, we sometimes have to look at all states when we're looking at appellate cases, Ninth Circuit. That needs us to go into some of these other states, not just Washington. So So we've done that, and I would just suggest that having the computer terminal approach, that's probably the best cost savings because it'll reduce the need for the space.
Right.
If your requirement. So if you need any additional guidance, I mean, if you need us to look at something, I don't know if Jen's already tasked with giving any kind of assistance for you or to that board for it, but we
I
can
haven't,
certainly
no,
look at it.
but we got a meeting coming up here, so.
Yeah, let us know if there's a specific request of trying to make sure you meet the requirement. I think like what you said, having a how-to guide for people that are trying to do things on their own, I think that's very beneficial. Because a lot
Okay.
of times people need the assistance of attorney for things that wouldn't be a court-covered attorney
Right.
cost.
I don't see
But they don't have the resources to go out and hire their own.
Right. Okay, is there any other questions?
Just did a quick check of RCW 7308010, which talks about the establishment of the Veterans Relief Funds. And we do have limitations here locally. I think we provide funding for housing, for food, for gasoline, so forth. But there's nothing that I could see in 7308010 that restricts or limits. It's just for the benefit and needs of indigent veterans. So you may be right. In fact, I think you are right.
So if, and that might just simply be, maybe we come back with a appropriate resolution that just identifies that funds shall be allocated to veterans who appear, typically, I know,
Excuse me, but it may be as simple as the local Veterans Committee who established those criteria for what was, is just having them broaden out the list.
yeah, I've met recently with the folks over at the Columbia Basin Veterans Place, which is located out there a little bit, not too far from here, out on the east side, and they're very involved with being able to identify folks here, so I'll follow up with them to see if that's something that they can.
And you know, we have the Veterans Center right down here too,
The,
downtown.
I think that's the one that moved.
Oh, they did move?
Yeah, are you talking about the one that's right off 20th, or was off 20th?
Yeah.
That's the one that had relocated why, I can't remember when, but they actually have a nice place out there on, I can't remember the address offhand, is it Weehee, but it's off Oregon Street, not too far from Oregon. That's where I did my swearing-in ceremony earliar this year.
Yeah, this is down just west of the water facility down there.
Ainsworth.
It might be the same one that we're talking about. It's off Oregon Street, just, gosh, I thought it's off 7th, if I recall.
I'll get the address.
Yeah, make sure.
All righty.
Yeah,
Is there any other
Just a
questions?
block north of A Street.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And we will take a 5-minute recess.
Yeah,
Okay, we'll get going here again.
you bet.
We'll move on to Superior Court.
Thank you for that. While Tiffany's getting ready, well, first of all, I want to thank the board, Chairman Didier, Commissioner Peck, Commissioner Mullen. Thank you for the opportunity to come and speak to you on behalf of Franklin County Superior Court. Mr. Johnson, it's good to see you again. Mr. Davidson, good to see you again. I think today what we're going to do is from my perspective, I'm going to give you a little bit of an update about what's going on with Superior Court and a little bit about the budget that we brought before you. Tiffany and I are going to speak to you a little bit about it, but the budget reflects two things that I want to focus on. One is the effect of the pandemic on the Superior Court, and then two, the unfunded mandate with respect to one of the positions that we're asking for from both Franklin and Benton County. As you know, the court system has just been rocked to the extent of the amount of cases. We'll have a slide to go over that with you a little. But the amount of cases, both criminal and civil, that are backlogged, and the amount of cases and resources have been really been tapped to the limit, to the extent of getting a criminal case out. With respect to the civil case, it's next to impossible to either get divorced or get your personal injury or any issue if you're going to go to trial in the courthouse. And so this budget cycle here today is going to talk a little bit about it. Tiffany will run the presentation a little bit, but then I'll give you some examples of why we have the need and what's going on with Superior Court. And I can tell you, from my perspective, it's been a challenge the last 2.5 years with all the different requirements and mandates and limitations to get get a criminal trial out. It's taxed the prosecutors, the Office of Public Defense, the clerk's office. It's not been shy of the whole courthouse or the justice system. So, and I think this budget reflects that. And then finally, before we get into the presentation, I just want to thank you on behalf of the Superior Court for your past support. You've been very favorable in the budget for the Superior Court in recognizing our needs, and we really appreciate that. We appreciate you having an opportunity today to kind of talk about the things that are going on in Superior Court. I encourage you, if I didn't touch on a subject that you might have questions about, please ask me. I heard a little bit about veterans courts. I can talk a little bit about drug court, being the drug court judge. So I'll turn it over to Tiffany. Tiffany?
Good afternoon. First off, I had to adjust some of my sheets that I provided you guys in August because I withdrew some things that Benton County already denied. So I just took them out so you guys wouldn't have to worry about considering them, knowing that they weren't going to pass in Benton County. I don't know if you want those sheets or just for me to provide them later.
Probably provide them later.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Tiffany.
Obviously, always request, like you always do, is to consider us when COLA raises are being looked at. If regular county employees get them, we just ask that by county be considered as well. The pro rata split is changing this year. Last year and for several years before that, Franklin County's portion for Benton Franklin Superior Court was 29%. It has decreased down to 26%. So you'll see that will kind of really make a huge adjustment across the board for the budget.
I just want to make sure, I know you're all aware that the bi-county employees got a raise, and we, based on the salary schedule. I want to say specifically that raise has really helped our employees and will help with the recruiting of some open positions that we currently have. As you know, the salaries are very competitive, and it's tough to get quality people. So I want to thank you. I want to make sure that I acknowledge that both Benton and Franklin County worked really hard. Mr. Johnson and his staff with the HR were able to make that happen with Benton County. So it really, it made a huge impact on the staff. I mean, I can tell you unequivocally, when you get a bailiff that gets a 20% raise, I mean, it's just stunning. Thank you. I really appreciate the board approving that. Go ahead.
Thank you. First up, I have our regular baseline expenditures, a couple of increases, not too big. I seem to come every year on our books. The cost of books keeps going up. We've scaled down the number of books our bench requires to just 2 each year, but they're very expensive. So it's, I'm asking for a $500 increase to that budget line item. The other line item is to our court operating expenses. We, our IS always gives me a anticipation of what our next year's costs will be, so I just asked for a request to meet those needs that they let me know about. And then also our court interpreter contracts. When I submitted my budget, it was one amount, but that had to increase because both my interpreters changed their mind and asked for an increase to their contracts, which I anticipate being about $11,655. So those are my baseline. So they total $12,655. Moving into our part of the baseline, which is more on the under the drug court, adult drug court, was we got approved through Benton County, so we're asking for your support as well, is to increase funding to adult drug court for location monitor devices. As you can see, the total cost is $12,500, but Franklin County's share would be about $3,600. And then UA supplies. Our adult drug court team recently attended a conference that was very beneficial to them, and what they learned is that for the best results in adult drug court, you should be testing your each participant at least 2 times a week to hold them accountable and see the best results. So to get the supplies to do those UA funding, we would need to increase that line item to $6,000. Your guys' portion $1,700. So.
Just a brief discussion on drug court. As you know, the Blake decision pretty much impacted the drug court, lost a significant amount of individuals participating in drug court because simple possession, went away. As currently drug court, there's 59 participants right now with about active 53. As you probably have heard before, we're allowed 70 participants. A part of this issue that we're asking for in the supplies, a UA, yes, they went to a conference, and the more UAs that are done on an individual keeps them honest. The second issue is the home monitoring, the issues that will allow us to reduce jail costs, and we're all concerned about jail costs. This home monitoring would be an alternative to a sanction, if you will, for the individual who may have not complied with all the issues of drug court, where the only option usually would be either place them in jail, and it would be a jail cost. This electronic home monitoring will allow, it will only be used or be charged if it's used. So we're working with collaboration with Moon Security. They give us all the equipment free, but it's by as-used basis. So if we use it, then we get charged. The last thing with the urinalysis, drug court, if you're aware, in the past, were doing their own. They would take the UA, they would sample it up, throw it out to a lab, and it would come back with the result. With the collaborative effort through the community, a provider in town is going to do all that for us. All we had to do is provide the samples, the cups and the testing equipment, or the testing materials. So I can tell you from our perspective, that's a great relief from the staff, so they don't have to do 2, 3 UAs a day on individuals. And then it also, that effort will allow to have off hours in one day in the weekend to have a random UA. So it really is a big benefit if we just provide this provider with the material. And as Tiffany said, the Benton County did pay for it out of the safety tax for both line items, the electronic monitoring and the urinalysis material.
you guys have any further questions as to our.
Questions?
I just had a real quick one on this location monitoring devices. I see you're asking for 1 year. That's a subscription, so that would be renewed. Just curious, because I used to work at Benton County, and they have a 2-year budget. How is that working? You're
It's
asking
always
for
very-
some...
Thank you for that, Mr. Davis. We'll be in front of you next year again.
Right.
Please have enough, if you approve it, the board approves, we'll be back in front of you. It's only because of a budget, the annual budget.
Okay.
Five
Yeah.
county, they're
Yeah,
Just want to make sure the board's clear. This can be,
gonna
right,
be every year.
okay.
And it may be less if we don't use it.
That's right.
right.
That's interesting, is done through Moon Security, is one that monitors all this for you? That's kind of cool. How many units, just roughly, do you know how many units that is?
I think they said up to 10. What that means is they're gonna actually hear drug court, here's 10 units. When you're ready to activate them, call us up. Well, you can hook them up right in the courtroom, ready to go, and then we make a call, they're on. And then off and running, which is, we don't have to pay for any repairs, it's just as-used basis. And let me tell you, it's a great, collaboration with Moon Security to do that, to give us that opportunity. This is another tool for drug court as opposed to jail.
So we don't have to worry about unit obsolescence because they keep renewing these
Right,
as any...
There you go get a new
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, okay, good.
No cost to us.
Right.
They just got that service, I guess I would call it a service fee, it's kind of use fee. That's what this amount of money will cover. And we're estimating, we obviously we're gonna be good stewards of the funding. If we get close, okay, we gotta stop using it. Or if we need more, if we're using it more often than, as opposed to going to jail, and I don't know what the jail cost is, 50, 60, versus like, I don't know, 15, 20. It's just a good steward for the functioning. If I answer your question, Mr. Davis.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Great. Go ahead.
Next, Superior Court has several requests for staffing to meet our day-to-day operation needs. So, first request, 3 bailiffs, 3 full-time bailiffs is what we are asking for. 2 of those positions have been approved already through Benton County's Public Safety Tax Fund. The 3rd one is pending and is on my Benton County current expense budget presentation, which is tomorrow, so I don't know about that 3rd one yet. But overall, we are hoping at the end of the budget season to have 3 new bailiff positions. So if you look on here, I split them up by 3 positions, and that way you guys know, well, if you can't fund 3, then you can choose how many you can fund. And then you can see on the very far right, Franklin County's portion for each individual bailiff. And then at the very bottom, a total for 3 positions, just for a general idea of the total cost. Our bailiffs, right now, they cover 2, sometimes 3 courtrooms at a time. That does not provide for adequate security for our public, our employees, or the members of our bench. The minute they're not in there is when those who are going to cause issues are going to cause the issues, and they happen fast. So we take our courtroom security very serious, and we want to make sure everybody is safe that comes to our courtrooms, and as well as the staff. So to meet that needs, we have, between Benton and Franklin counties, we have 9 courtrooms. Right now, and then there's one in Prosser. Right now, we only have 6 bailiffs, so clearly that's not enough if we had all 9 of our courtrooms running. And then that doesn't compensate for the ones that have to be out of the office at any given time. We allow for up to 2 bailiffs out of the office at any given time, but that does hinder our, our courtroom security options. So that's why we are asking for 3 more to hopefully get better at meeting the day-to-day needs of our courtroom security.
Yes, let me just expand on that. As you know, the bailiffs are in charge of the courtroom security and collaboration. If there's a real event that we have a good partnership with both sheriffs, that if there's an arrest in the courtroom, then they send the deputies in. But really, the bailiff's work is not just only the courtroom security, it's also to manage the people that are in the courtroom, manage the jurors that come in for a jury trial. They are in charge, when the bailiff maintains the jury, that he's in charge of not only the courtroom, but the jurors also. The issues that we've come up with is, that we've seen a problem is that we just don't have enough bailiffs to secure the courtrooms in order for us to get our work done. And as you know, there's been a number of issues that may have arisen through issues in the courtroom that the bailiffs need to react to in a swift fashion. It's not uncommon on a daily basis that there might be an issue of security. The bailiff is technically assigned to the judicial officer, but it is all there for security purposes for all citizens of Franklin County when they come to court. They expect to be safe, be protected when they come in and litigate. As you know, litigation's contentious sometimes. Someone wins, someone loses. Some are not too good losers, or it can be somewhat difficult. So sometimes the judge, for me, there's been often than not that I've been in there by myself and a clerk, and there things happen. So we're asking, to fund the additional three bailiffs to support each courtroom. There are 10 judicial officers. We've added 2 part-time commissioners in Benton County to help with the backload. We're not asking for it. We're just asking for a bailiff for each courtroom. And I'll be candid with you, is that we may not be able to facilitate all 9 courtrooms because of time off, someone sick, covering, training. Bailiffs go through trainings. As you know, they're armed. They're armed bailiffs, which is also unique. They're one of the unique armed bailiffs in the state of Washington. That's why the salary survey was so important, that they have additional requirements of firearms qualification, use of force, taser training. Less than a law enforcement officer, but most of, I think I can say it, yeah, most of them are ex-law enforcement officer. I think we had one, but I think that one, not there. So they're all ex-law enforcement officers. So the need is there, and we want to make sure we can protect not only the public, but the staff, the judicial officer. And as Tiffany said, Benton County approved 2 additional bailiffs through the support of the Benton County clerk, because there was a number of times that her clerk was in the courtroom without security or out a bailiff, and there were a number of incidents that, it was just the judge and the clerk. So she supported that, and they used that out of the public safety task for the 2, and they didn't take the 3rd one out of the public safety task, and we're hoping we'll get that into the general budget. The need is there, the safety's there, and we just hope you support that.
Hiring bailiffs at $39,000 a year?
Yes. The average bailiff was like $18 an hour.
Yeah, starting was actually in the $17 an hour.
Was it 17?
Before the
Okay.
adjustment, it was in, yeah.
I'm sorry, Commissioner. Yes.
It was
Short
very
answer.
difficult.
It's hard.
Well, I would
And we have
expect-
3 openings. I don't know, we're gonna, to be real blunt with you, I don't know. There's just, it's hard enough to get a law enforcement officer, a retired law enforcement officer that even just wants to, they go down and work at Amazon down in Hermiston and make, like $75, $80 an hour. Half KPD, ex-KPD are down there. So it's really tough to get, we're also competing with the federal building with those bailiffs at the federal level. We're losing one here shortly to the federal building as a bailiff, going down there to work in the federal court. So we're going to have 3 openings. If these are approved, we'll have 3 openings. Also, there's a retiring bailiff, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know. We're going to be in a pinch. I don't know what we're going to do. Just not enough pay, a lot of qualifications.
It's barely above minimum wage.
You're preaching to me or to the choir.
Well, no,
I'm just,
no, the current salary adjustment that you guys gave them is much better.
Okay.
Yes.
The
That's gonna
20%.
help so much, for real. We are very grateful for that, because knowing that we had 2 people leaving, maybe 3 by the end of this year, knowing we needed 3 more, we were worried about being able to get those positions filled. I'm hopeful that with the new salary adjustment, we won't have as much of a problem filling those positions.
For an example, the last person that retired from KPD had 20 years of service, and it was like $17.35 an hour. It was Dave, $17.55. And then another one retired from Richland PD was like $19 an hour. It just,
Yeah.
but the salary increase that
Much better.
much
Okay.
better. You know, the analysis, and I'm, you know, if you saw the salary survey, they're trying to compare, you know, like a mall security person or something like that. That's not these folks.
Right.
They're carrying a firearm, they're trained in self-defense and defensive tactics and, you know, tasers, so they're a unique individuals that come to the court system. And while Tiffany will say, yes, the salary, it's great, I'm trying to, we're grateful, I'm still saying it's gonna be a tough task to replace and add these. I don't know where, we'll have to really do some active recruiting on retirement, law enforcement, or some active recruiting on CBC or some other college campus, you know, security or something that might be able to want to relocate, but, you know, first we got to get the positions, and then we'll see how that goes. I hope I answered your question, Commissioner.
Yeah, thank you.
Next request for a staff position is a judicial assistant. We recently converted an open position into a judicial assistant, and that barely met the extra needs that we were hoping for it to fulfill. So now we're asking for a second one. Again, you can see the outline of the expense to Franklin County. To give you a little bit of background, most counties, each judicial officer has a judicial assistant, so we're just basically trying to get 2 to assist our 10 and now our new 2 for Benton County, with just the recent increase in all of our day-to-day duties, the backlog of cases. The judicial assistant is what it is. They assist the judge. They assist the tracking of criminal caseloads and their trials. We don't have a case manager that's ever done that, so the judicial assistant that we have has been tracking the trials for us since we now have that need. They do a lot of tracking of hearings on our dockets and to help assist our judges prepare for those lengthy dockets and all of the prep time that goes into that. So we were just asking for another position to help our judges.
So let me expand a little bit. The judicial assistants, as Tiffany indicates, there's generally throughout the state of Washington, take Spokane for example, each judicial officer has a judicial assistant that takes care of their scheduling, any needs the judicial officer. Some do a little bit of research and writing for the judicial officer. In our jurisdiction now, we have one that was, Jose, that was the judicial assistant taking care of all the scheduling. With the help of your staff, we were able to convert a court reporter, which we still have a need for, but we had a greater need for a judicial assistant that would help us with our case tracking, our setting cases for trial. We converted that position for one judicial assistant to allow us to at least have one dedicated to the judicial officers, not just the schedule. This new position is going to assist with the backlog of all the criminal and civil cases that are lingering for the last 2.5 years that have not been able to get out to trial. This assistant will deal directly with the other judicial assistant and the presiding judge to assist in trying to get the cases as quickly to trial as we can. Also managing the judicial officer schedule to the extent we got, as I indicated, there are 12 now judicial officers. There are currently 2 judicial assistants, this will be the 3rd, that also are, as we're covering both by county, we have special sets, we have different complex issues with cases, and notwithstanding, you know, the time off for vacation and trying to fill in, that's a daunting task. It really is a daunting task. So this judicial assistant will primarily assist the presiding judge and the other judicial assistant on the scheduling of cases and trying to get the cases out from the backlog. Any questions on that one? Okay, go ahead.
Request is for a minor guardianship. As you all know, January 1, 2021, the legislature put some unfunded mandate on us. This is where they repealed RCW 26, the third-party custody cases, and created the Uniform Guardianship Act. That act alone has created a whole new case management, set of cases that need case management that we do not have a case manager to cover. A case manager, they see a case from start to finish, making sure that they're hitting all their deadlines. If they get a case scheduling order that tells them, you know, they have status hearings, they have trial, they have filing deadlines, and then a trial. So they work through the whole case, making sure those deadlines are met, amending case scheduling orders when it's necessary. They keep certain case notes on these cases, especially these ones where there's a lot of parties involved, keeping some case notes for the judges to help them in their preparation before the case comes before them in court. So having this mandate come down since 2021 has been a huge impact to staff, because I've had to split up the duties among several staff just to cover the needs of what a minor guardianship case manager could do. So now we're here asking for a full-time minor guardianship case manager to current case managers from trying to cover.
Let me put it more blunt. We have no person to fill this job duty at all by this unfunded mandate. Tiffany was being very kind. The staff, because we have no position to an individual fill this, staff has taken the additional workload to make sure that the minor guardianship was implemented. We have to comply. You may not know that the minor guardianship deals with minors, the minors that are in need, either third-party custody issue or some other issue that the minor has that has the court intervention. Specifically, with the minor has to have an attorney. There has to be a court visitor. Could be a guardian ad litem. There are many facets to this position, not only just monitoring the case, but assigning, getting the judge to sign off on a court visitor, an attorney, or whatever the minor may be. If you think about it, it was the old third-party custody issue sometimes, to the extent where a minor needed a parent to take care of them because there was no parent available. So this mandate has impacted this. I think I can fairly say the state and local jurisdictions significantly, because as I said, it's not funded, it's ordered, and we got to do it. We got to comply. The thing for Superior Court right now is, we don't have anybody to do it. I'll be asking Benton County to pay their share, but it's just something that is a need for us, and we understand that these unfunded mandates affect the county. It's something that's been provided or ordered upon the county and the judiciary, and we're bound to follow it.
Yeah, what I didn't mention is part of the case manager is each case has a potential to have 3 attorneys appointed. The biological mother and father each are eligible for an attorney, and if the child is a minor of 12 years of age or older, well, on top of a court investigator, so a court visitor. So the case manager would be in charge of making sure all of these different court service appointments get met. So they would be working with OPD as well, because OPD helps facilitate the appointment of an attorney. We do have a very, it's actually a pretty good contract with AOC, where they will reimburse us for the appointment services. So for any attorneys that we appoint and court visitors, we send in a A-19, and they will reimburse us fully for those costs to the court.
I just wish they would reimburse us for the case managers and all the other issues
It's
but
not court
it's
vote.
just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So.
But those services are being reimbursed. So we, just to kind of go along with all of the our requests. We have a lot of requests this year. We wanted to kind of just go over the stats and the backlog to give you an idea of why we are so extremely busy these days, and that this backlog and the busyness is not going away anytime soon. Right now, we currently have 13,341 active cases.
So hold on, Tiffany. Think about that. 13,341 cases. There's 7 of us. And if they all went to trial, I wouldn't be here anymore. To get them all pushed through. It's just astounding the amount of cases that are active in both counties. Go ahead.
Right. So that's why we went over that. So from 2018, there are still almost 1,900 cases that are still active from 2018. 2019, much more, same with 2020. A typical case is, longest is completed within 2 years from the time they are filed. That's more common for a civil case or a very high-profile criminal case, such as like a homicide or whatnot. Most domestic cases, which is a divorce, paternity action, they're usually final within a year, sometimes even 9 months. Their case scheduling order gives them a trial 9 months from filing. So if you look at the 2018, 2019, 2020, if those are still active, it's safe to assume they're active because they need a trial date that we have not been able to provide over the last 2 years. 2021, we'll probably see more, and 2022, see more of those start settling out during the normal course, but we just don't know. I think for a while there, we weren't seeing a whole lot of completion in some cases because they knew they weren't going to go into court, so there was no reason to settle, especially civil cases. They will drag on if there's no push to come to court and go to trial. And I did another scale just to show the differences between filing, the cases filed and the ones that are still active for each case type. You want to go over those anymore?
Yeah, let's go over it. So just to put it in perspective, I know numbers, Commissioner Peck's really good with numbers and statistics, but just to put it in perspective, and I want to make sure I articulate this, in the criminal by-county active caseload, there's just criminal, okay, criminal cases, 2,806 cases. In Benton County, there's 2,076 cases. So they're already, if they exercise their judicial right to go to trial with 7 judicial officers, and we're able to get 2 trials out in Benton County for 48 weeks, the math is staggering to the extent that if we went to that, it would be more like 27 years. But statistically, this is where Commissioner Peck will go. Statistically, over the history of Superior Court, for criminal cases, there's about 6% of the cases go to trial. About 6%. And again, you use the 48 weeks, and you do about 96 trials a year. It's going to take about 1.3 to 2.6 a year, to 2.6 years to get the 6%, just the 6%, to get caught up. Also, that if we were able to do, that's just Benton County. In Franklin County, there's 730 active criminal cases. Again, you do the statistical analysis of 6% at 48 per year. It'll take about a year to get the current backlog up to date if we do 1 trial in Franklin County. So at 6%, we're hoping 44 cases will go to trial. Hoping. That's what we're planning for. So that's just criminal. If you think about domestic, let's just say that you want to get divorced or you have some issue of child custody. There's currently 3,541 cases. Do an estimate, low estimate, 5% get out to go to a bench trial. 48 weeks again. It's going to take about 3.69 years to get divorced. Mind you, the statute says 90 days. There's just relatively no hope, if you think about it, of trying to get a civil case out.
So what do you think happens to the 6% when people are facing a 2-year wait for a trial?
Two issues. One, we order them to mediation and pray that they mediate and they resolve at a CR2.
And even incentivize that,
Yes,
because it's cheaper and quicker and serves justice faster.
but that 6%, even if we use, say, 5%, I'm gonna use 6. There's just some cases just gotta go to trial.
Right.
They're not, child custody issues, there's no way they can get to agreement on those issues. Property, complex litigations, it's not gonna happen. So the incentive, that's one. And then the next part, and then this is more practical, they wait them out. Attorney's not gonna go to trial. They want a trial. Well, hopefully. So the analysis is, so if we got currently, we have 3 judges that we're gonna assign to the criminal docket. 2 in Benton, 1 in Franklin. One judge, another judge is assigned to the juvenile offender docket.
Trials.
What's that?
The trials.
Trial, excuse me. One judge assigned to the juvenile termination and fact-finding or domestic paternity and guardianship. That one judge. So 5 of the judges are already knocked out of the, and that's notwithstanding, training, gone on vacation, sickness. So we need a minimum of 5 judges to try to get this scenario of the 6% out. If they all want to go out, we just can't do it. It's just not going to happen. So the issue for the court to, for an update to the board is that, I don't want to use the word crisis, but, it's definitely in dire straits if you're trying to litigate. And our priority is the criminal matters because of the due process right to jury. And there's been a number of them just been continued. And also, to the extent, if you read the headlines in the paper, there's 14 murders in Benton County, there's a number of murder cases in Franklin County. They're complex, they take longer. They're going to probably go to trial. So that's notwithstanding, those high profile, high complex cases that need to go. And it attacks the whole system, meaning from the prosecution, the Office of Public Defense, not having enough prosecutors, not enough public defenders, not enough courtrooms, and I haven't even spoke, regarding jury service. We saw a drop in jury service substantially. Right here in Franklin County, you might get, don't quote me, Commissioner Peck, on the statistics, but you call in maybe 150 and you might get 75, 60. And in a complex, murder trial, you got 12 jurors, but you may have up to 4 alternates or 5 alternates. I appreciate that. So I wanted her to tell me more time.
So on that domestic side, if there's a 90-day
Statute, you
deadline,
can get divorced in 91 days.
and there's already how many that are years?
Right, and this doesn't take,
3,541 that
Okay,
are
so,
waiting.
so this is the backlog. It doesn't account that while we're trying to address the backlog that, or he already said will take over 3 years, this doesn't count the new filings
filings
moving
either.
forward
Right.
that are
I'm not
gonna
even talking
tack
about
on
those.
top
Oh.
of those. It's staggering. It's kind of
We
scary.
got lots of work. We're not gonna, it's not gonna go away anytime soon. Anyway, go ahead.
So
That's a caseload.
that's the caseload and why our needs for additional staffing is so significant. This last slide just shows you the total of all of our requests for positions on top, and then I have it separated between our positions and adult court because they're different.
and that's
line
our
items.
amount in the red,
Right.
Franklin County's
Your
amount.
amount based on your 26% pro rata share.
So how much of your request is predicated on new and expected to continue workload, and how much is predicated on backlog?
Great question. The one that we're asking for that can directly be tied to that, bailiff, judicial assistant, 100%.
Those are for the forward-looking natural increase in caseload.
So we can actually use all the courtrooms, make them all available, and use, as I've indicated today, the 5 judicial officers, given the coverage.
Sure.
For the judicial assistant and the bailiff.
Well, having a courtroom, having a judge, having a bailiff, none of those things by themselves solve anything. You've got to have a complete suite to hear a case. And that's why I'm curious about going forward, those kinds of costs seem reasonable as part of a growing population and a growing tax base to pay for it. But to build a complete suite of court facilities and staffing to address a backlog, to me, is not a great investment. We ought to be looking for alternative means. You've mentioned arbitration. I've got to believe that there are, well, I know there are smart people in the Superior Court system, but I've got to believe that there are some ideas for how we work on that backlog without growing the entire system beyond the real ongoing need. And so that's the question for me, and I don't think we'll have a hard answer,
No, I won't want.
but I can get a sense of it.
It would be disingenuous to tell you to come in and tell you that we need more courtrooms, more staff.
Sure.
We need, obviously, to get more trials out, get more cases resolved. Yes, part of that the issue for Superior Court is try to look to alternative resolution to try to get the case. Those cases that are right would be civil, 100%. Criminal, I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
They want to go to trial. All of the 2,806 say, Your Honor, we're ready to go to trial. I can't do it.
Yeah. Are all counties facing this same relative percentage backlog?
I can say generally, yes. Specifically, there was a Yakima, the one that I saw recently, I was KView, saw the Yakima Superior Court had the exact same issue. And to some extent, they were just a tad bit better off, and I'm not trying to downplay their need. That's the one that I really know locally, compared to Tri-Cities, or Benton, Franklin County to Yakima, they're in the same boat. My gut is, from my experience, I think all of the court system have been completely inundated by the backlog. And others have been able, I'll give one example. Others have been very effective with doing court by Zoom. I am not a proponent of court by Zoom, juries by Zoom, but I'm speaking of King County. All through the pandemic, they were on Zoom, doing trials, resolving cases. There's this thing called the confrontation clause that I think is an issue with respect to that, meaning presence, no masking, certain issues. But they were very effective. I'm not advocating for that here today. I think the only issue, the short version is alternative resolution, civil cases, domestic, personal injury, binding arbitration, required mediation, criminal cases. It's a constitutional right to go to trial by jury. Unless they want a bench trial, they get a trial. So I don't have much resolute for that. I think the other ones, there is a means for it.
I'm just wondering if there isn't some parallel process by which some of the less complex, less contentious civil cases can't be handled. Maybe something that's established for a year or two or three. It's additional cost, but the cost is there regardless.
Right.
And it accelerates access to the court. I don't know what that looks like, if those are commissioners or pro tems or how that's done, but
We already require, for our domestic case types, a mediation. And then if that's not successful, we do hold what we call settlement conferences. We usually use a judge pro tem to do those.
Sure.
But they are required to come and do some one-on-one with that judge pro tem to try to settle the case. Civil, they have the option of going into mandatory arbitration, or they can go to mediation on their own as well. So there are other avenues for them to attempt trial, but like we said, we're seeing a lot more extreme cases, and so they just need court help. They can't do it on their own.
Yes, one last thing I want to talk about on the civil. You talked about pro tems and
commissioners.
part-time judicial commissioners. For the civil part has got to agree to have a non-judge to hear their case. And I'm just my experience in the last the explosion of unlawful detainer actions and the pro tems. They don't want a pro tem.
If it accelerates access, maybe a percentage will. That's That's the hope.
I'm whole. I mean,
And some, as you've already pointed out, are delaying intentionally. So you're not gonna get all of them, but I'm old enough to remember the TV series Night Court. So.
yes. Oh, it was a little comedy. I liked it. I thought it was a sitcom, but it was great. I remember too.
Yeah.
I'm not sure we're there yet, but
I'm, just to be clear, I'm not comparing our Superior Court with Night Court, but
Mr. Beck, it was my humor, my bad intention. Okay, we're good?
Any
Yeah,
more
that's
questions?
the end. We thank you guys for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for the
Thank
board.
you.
Appreciate it.
Copies of
Yeah,
any changes you have?
I have those.
Next, we'll move to Juvenile Justice Center.
Baseline expenditures. And that's where I adjusted the, I don't know if you need this for the interpreter. Yeah. Yeah, those are the three areas.
Awesome, thank you.
And I just have to make sure that the case manager completely because we didn't get.
Because nobody, okay, great, thank you.
Thank you.
Tiffany, are these yours? It's left for people there if they want to look at some of the materials that's in what the commissioners are looking at.
Mr. Wheeler, please go ahead.
Welcome, Commissioners, and thank you for having us here today. First of all, I just want to start off with some introductions. We have Judge Stam, who has been our presiding judge at Juvenile Court now since Judge Mitchell retired this year. Seems like it's been longer, but since this year. And then we have Crystal Garcia. She's our finance manager at the Juvenile Court. Crystal's worked at the Juvenile Court for the past 17 years. And then I'm a little late to the game here. My name is Dave Wheeler. I am the Juvenile Court Administrator now officially. I think when Mr. Banks introduced me back in April, he was retiring and I was the interim. And I did accept the position officially here 2 months ago. And so this is my first opportunity to be before the board of any kind for a budget presentation. So I put together just some talking points to help keep me straight. I know that we provided information ahead of time, and it shouldn't take me too long to cover this, and then I want to be available to answer any questions that you all may have. But first of all, much like Judge Burrows said, we greatly want to thank the board for their support through what was this wage survey for Bi-County Juvenile Courts. As a result of that, the hard work of HR, administration, and the board, our staff feel much better about where they're at with things and feel recognized. I think that's been important. Our leadership team appreciates that, as well as the judicial officers. So again, thank you so much for your support through that wage survey that we were able to realize this year. We do appreciate that. Just generally on some trends, give some context for this. You know, our juvenile referrals are up over last year, almost double. Our filings are up over last year, almost double. Our diversions, our referrals to diversions are up over last year, almost double. But to give some context, that's not necessarily where they were at pre-COVID. So, you know, in 2020, when COVID hit, schools shut down, our crime referrals did decrease. They are coming back up. So we haven't reached back to where we are in 2019, but they are coming back up. And so I just wanted to keep that in folks' mind while we're looking at things today. As far as detention, currently today we have 17 youth in detention. You heard previously about some of the serious violent crimes that we've had here in this community. We do have 5 youth in detention right now that are in detention on murder or attempted murder charges. And so the level of our juvenile youthful offender in detention is concerning, and we do need support in terms of our staffing to maintain those youth. And so while 17 doesn't sound like a whole lot, actually that number seems to be trending up a little bit from where it was earlier in the year. I was surprised. Our average daily population right now is 14. I thought it would have been higher just because in my time here over the last few months where I've been paying attention, we've been running anywhere from 15 to 20 on any given day. And when we looked at a breakdown for the early part of the year, we started in January, like with 8 youth in detention. And so that, in terms of our average over the course of time, 14 is our number right now, but it does feel like it's starting to trend up. Our youth are staying in detention for longer periods of time. When I looked at the 17 youth that we have right now, out of those, only 2 were serving sentences yesterday. So they committed their crime and they were sentenced and they're serving out that crime. The rest are being held until their case is resolved by the courts. And I think sometimes, at least when I look at some of the comments folks make around here on the court of public media, social media, whatever it is, there's this impression that the courts aren't holding people accountable, in particular for juveniles. And, that's not what I'm seeing. When juveniles commit a serious crime, they come before the court. I think our law enforcement in this area does a tremendous job aggressively pursuing those. They bring them before the prosecutor, I think, who do a good job of filing those cases. And then they come before a court, who I think look at the seriousness of the offense, the potential threat to community safety, and oftentimes we see those, when all the serious violent cases, we see those kids being held in the interest of community safety with some amount of bail that's being put on them. So the 15 youth that we have in detention right now are awaiting their trial. They're held awaiting their trial with the option to bail out, and those bail amounts are considered, I think, commensurate with the level of seriousness of their crime. So I think sometimes there's this perception that nothing happens to juveniles, and I think that's a myth, and I don't think that's correct at all. So anyway, and then our dependency cases. With our dependency cases, we have, many of you may know, what's called a guardian ad litem program. And so anytime a child is removed from their parent for allegations of abuse or neglect, there is this dependency process, and for all juveniles 8 or younger, our court appoints a guardian ad litem to advocate for that child's best interest in that court process. And so during the last couple of years with COVID, those cases seemed to be continued. It was very hard to move those cases along and to hold trials, as you heard previously. And so while right now our referrals, the cases coming into dependency aren't necessarily increasing, because of the last couple of years, that system has swollen. So the children that were appointed to represent, that number has gone up over the last couple of years. Again, because the system has swollen there. Hopefully that's something down the road we'll work through that backlog. But for right now, that is an area that we have seen this increase as a result of cases not being resolved. Just in terms of the county split, I know that's something that drives the operations and facilities. Our county split for operations is 35.92% for Franklin County. It was a little bit unusual this year that the OFM numbers that we usually use and the average that we take weren't available due to the census. And so Crystal reached out to OFM, talked with them about that. They provided her a way to address that, and we believe, and that's how it's reflected in there. And I think if you look at that compared to last year, it's like a 0.08% difference less than what it was last year.
And this split is
Point-
based on
0.06.
at-risk youth as opposed to Superior Court, which is caseloads.
Yes, the at-risk youth population. Yes.
And that's kind of the difference. It's, usually we use the 12 to 17-year-olds. Well, OFM only had available the average breakdown between 10 to, I can't think of it, that's 10 to 14, which obviously would include the 2 years that we don't count. So they kind of had me jimmy-rig and said, hey, this is the best we have. So I reached out to Dave. Dave reached out to both administrators. This is the best we have. This is what we have to go off of. And Benton County agreed as well. We just kind of, we're going to go with it.
And so again, it is a 0.06, I'm sorry, thanks for the clarification, reduction from where it was last year in terms of the split. So just some other things that I'm sure you've heard, that our hiring and retaining has been difficult, particularly with detention. I mean, detention's one of those areas where we've seen a lot of turnover here in the last couple of years. It's been harder to retain staff. And again, we hope that, some of the increases that detention officers were able to realize might be, they might be more inclined to stay. And it might make it easier for us to recruit people into that side of things. And so But it is, because of the numbers where we've been down, we have had to rely heavily on that temporary relief help to come in or overtime. And so those are things that you'll see as part of our request as well. We do have 6 open positions right now. Some of the, I think 2 of those are in detention and the other 4 up front. Some of that is self-inflicted. My stepping in, I've taken maybe a different look at where our organization is going. We've had 2 distinct units. I'm looking at combining those into 1 unit. Both of those units were comprised of juvenile probation counselors. And so I think, you know, that we can work more efficiently and more effectively under 1 unit with 1 probation manager and 2 assistants to supervise and direct the work. So I'm not asking for any additional staff or new staff as far as that goes. I was here last night, you know, to request a line item transfer for our, what was a manager, our intervention manager, to become a assistant manager. So it was actually a reduction. But it fits in line with trying to keep 1 house, all juvenile probation counselors working under 1 manager. And we've seen the work be more fluid across the units, and sometimes units create some silos or walls that don't necessarily need to exist. And, you know, this was my attempt at trying to do things more effectively, and then talking with our leadership team and the judges, they were willing to support that. And so now, once I go before Benton County next Tuesday to present that, and if approved, then I look to hire, and then that starts a domino effect. Then I can start backfilling some of our probation counselor positions that we will hope to promote and then hope to backfill. And so out of those 6 positions, just so the board knows, some of that is self-inflicted by me in terms of a decision that we've made. So just in terms of some other updates, you know, appreciate Franklin County support in looking at our facility and looking at what is now a remodel process. You may be aware we had a needs assessment and feasibility study conducted by a group called DLR, and so that has been completed. And so that is moving forward. But just in terms of the, you know, the reason I bring that up today also is just in terms of the current facilities, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And I think you're aware of that. I think that's why we're looking towards this fairly extensive remodel. You know, we have a cooling tower that's a big ticket item that's well past its lifespan, and fortunately it made it through the summer. We ordered a new cooling tower, had a contract, ordered it, I don't know, 4 months ago, and given the lead time getting things here, it should be coming in here pretty soon. But our facilities is certainly needing some upgrades, and some of the costs that you'll see in our budget reflect just the maintenance for keeping that building going. There were a lot of costs this year in HVAC and electrical and plumbing, so you'll see that reflected as well as some of our requests. You know, as far as operations, you know, in terms of the medical needs of the youth, the mental health, security, food services, I mean, things are going up. Costs for services are going up. And so those are some of the things that you'll also see reflected in terms of our request. And then just the assessments. I think you'll, with COVID and going to technology and having to be more remote and virtual and everything, it just seems like there's increasing need for technology, upgrading computers, and then so our IT assessments from what we've seen have increased greatly for this coming year. And then along with that, the other things that you see there. And then, you know, we are looking to, most of our vehicles are vehicles that we've purchased over time independently, and we're looking to start to transition to the county fleet, the ER&R, and with the hope of swapping out an old vehicle with a newer vehicle on this ER&R, which will come with its own set of replacement and maintenance costs associated with that. When we look, we have right now four cars of our fleet of, what do we have, like 14?
We have 14. That's not including the trailers or anything like that. But.
So 4 of our 14 vehicles are on this ER&R, and we just hope to, each year, try to replace one of those old vehicles with a newer one. So that's just the general overview, and then I believe you've all been provided our aids to other government in terms of the specific requests. I don't know if you want me to go through each one of those. I do want to point out that we had originally requested an adjustment to our administrative secretary position. That was taken off, that was scratched out because at the time we were submitting budgets, we were also going through that wage survey and we didn't know what the final results were gonna be. I don't think those were actually signed off by the boards until mid-September. And so that was actually resolved through that, so we crossed that out. In terms of my request as far as additional staffing, I have asked for, currently we have a 60% secretary that supports our guardian ad litem program. And just given the demands on that, both by the volume of cases that we advocate for, as well as some legislative changes that have added an extra docket that we have to maintain and provide reports for, we just have more workload coming through there. And so my request today for the board is just increasing that 65% to 75%. This 60% position, because she's been there for a long time, she's already been grandfathered in and has benefits. So in terms of cost, there wouldn't be the cost for benefits. Those are already factored in. It really is just the cost for the salary for 15% of her time over the coming year. And I just, looking down the road, I could see this position needing to increase in time anyway. I don't know how we would fill a 60% time if she does retire here pretty soon, which I believe she's talking about maybe in the next 2 years. So just logistically, it really takes more than 60% of a person to do what she's able to do, and she's highly efficient, very efficient in what she's able to do in her 60%. So that's my one request for the staffing. The other requests are broken down there by temporary relief. And again, I don't know what normal process is. If you want me to state on the record what the request is, I don't know what you would prefer, or how much more detail you would like me to get into beyond that. Any questions?
Questions?
Just looking through some of the numbers and aids to other government here. Not taking a position on them, just curious. Under the expenditure lines, 552-00490 Hanford Communities, showing a $6,000 expenditure, and then $10,000 to Benton Franklin Fair, and it's just those kinds of miscellaneous costs. Can you speak to those just real briefly?
Actually, those are, the juvenile line is included in the entire aids to other governments.
Oh, okay.
So
All
those
right.
are going to be independent of,
Okay.
unless Dave wants to contribute to the fair.
Well,
I do
I'm
every
looking-
year when I eat a corn dog there.
So these are the numbers included under your tab, and it's aids to other governments, and I'm going, why are they providing aids to? So you just rolled up with everybody else.
I feel that way when I see our IT credit card bill that gets rolled up with all these other accounts that I don't understand, so.
Just for the benefit of the group here, the line you want to look at in there on page 45 is 527-00490, that juvenile services Benton County, where it's all rolled into one.
Give me the number again.
490.
So
I'm sorry.
they might be a little different because those numbers had to be provided in August.
There's six different 490s, so.
And in September is when the salary survey was granted, so I actually submitted an addendum, but I
That's
don't
okay.
think
I've-
I actually submitted an updated.
No, I've got the
line there.
line. It's
Yeah.
527-00490.
I emailed it to you, I just didn't email it in that form.
And for a minute there, I thought you were at the fair recruiting,
Huh?
clients.
Still went up like 200,000.
That sounds about right.
I do want to just shout out for Crystal. With this exercise this year, she actually had the opportunity to present last year for the first time here. She's still relatively new in this finance position, and the spreadsheets and numbers that she keeps track of is incredible. And so at the time that budgets were due the end of August, we were also in the middle of this wage survey, and so she had to run back through as soon as that wage survey was sealed and signed, and then adjust all the line items for each position to provide the updated amended budget. So just the timing of things made things difficult, and she's She's a trooper.
Okay, are there any other questions? Thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Cody. Thank you, Commissioners.
Judge on your-
Tim,
Thank you.
Tim, can you answer a quick question for us? On page 45, we show under the expenditures and uses the 4-digit code, and then down below it goes to a 7-digit code. Is that just a BARS manual?
Yeah, it was a BARS manual adjustment because ultimately for most of the departments, there's there's a 5-number string that's built into most budgets or whatever. Within this one, the 5 digits is different for different. The juvenile's different than the court reimbursement and stuff. And so I broke it up so I could list the 5 digits for everything instead of having it baked into the fund.
So did that take, was that, because that's including the base sub there, so.
Correct.
Right. So was there actual code revision of the base subs? It was changed or?
No, it was just getting it reflected in here better so that, because within the other ones, within like facilities, it's built into the department itself. So 101-200, it's
Right.
built into that. And so with this, I felt it was, because we were having to do adjustments at year end to file to the state auditors. We were having to make adjustments to
all in one
reflect
department.
what base sub they were supposed to be in. So I decided that was too much work and I wanted to actually put it where it should be so it was in the right place at the end of the year. It was for my benefit.
Are we good?
Good.
Nothing more to catch up on here. So we'll recess till 9 o'clock tomorrow morning.